Oh yeah, great job, Javi. Um, Dude, I've had the honor of knowing Javi for quite a while now. We've been on each other's podcasts. I know his family, and they've been on my podcast, and it's been pretty cool. This guy has got a heart of gold, and he's resilient. So really, really proud of that guy. And let's give him one more round of applause. Great job, Javi. He said it's never too late to recalibrate, right? Never too late to recalibrate. Sometimes we feel like, we're running out of time, but we usually have time to reset and make some things right. And then the one day I will. Chaz brought up yesterday, he brought up Dr. Dan Sullivan. Dr. Dan Sullivan's got a book called The Gap versus the Gain, and he talks a lot about what Javier was talking about there. It's like everything will be okay when, right? And we live in this world of that, so that we're always placing our happiness and our peace off to this distant moment that we have not yet gotten to. When most of the lessons, most of the stuff that's worth anything in the meantime is happening now, right? The gains, the learning, right? So it's pretty awesome. Chaz Wilson, who is the CEO, founder of MasterNetworks. When I first got involved with MasterNetworks years ago, I was just starting out in my business, and I was learning how important relationships were. And as time got on, and I was starting to really understand that relationships don't just put you in a position to know a guy, but it also like insulates your business, right? It helps you kind of protect it against some of the things that can happen to it. And it puts you in a position to bring value to your clients by connecting them to somebody that can serve them in a different capacity that you can. And through MasterNetworks, I was starting to really grow my business. And I was like, man, this is pretty dope. I had an opportunity to become the partner for our region of MasterNetworks. But before I did that, I wanted to find out what like MasterNetworks was really about back in Dallas. So I went to their conference called Connect. And when I get to Connect, I'm really just like going around the room trying to find out the people, who's the people that are behind this, right? Who are the people that are involved? Like, are they the people that you want to be aligned with? Are these the people that you want to be connected with? And do they stand for similar things? And I came across our next speaker for the first time at that event. I got the opportunity of meeting her and her husband, and I was immediately attracted to them because I felt like, we just had some similarities, and I didn't know like where the similarities would come, but I would later learn that, these people were resilient. They were ready to take on the world. And they were ready to do it in a way that was different than most people. They didn't want to fake it till they made it. Right. And over the years of knowing our next speaker, I really got to understand where and truly, how our stories would kind of connect and overlap a little bit. And I got to see this person create a platform that stood for something that we all really can relate to, which is being authentically her, right? Unapologetically her, right? And I'm just super excited because, when you're talking about somebody who comes from this relationship place, we get excited when we're in this relationship place to make connections. Javi talked about me introducing him to Michael Faber and Unleash You, connecting Michael Faber to Chaz Wilson. I love being a connector. I love that. It's like, such a way to bring value. And you guys have no idea how excited I am to introduce to you my friend, Ashleah Burkeen.
Am I good? Sorry, James, you can introduce me next time, okay? So I'm not going to tell you much about myself and my backstory and those kind of things because you could stalk me on socials like everybody else does, all right? And there's a specific amount of time I have today and a lot I want to fit in, so I want to make sure I get right to it, okay? So like many of us have mentioned, I grew up poor and broke, except I was very aware of it because I come from a very big family. And so I had my cousins' homes and their things and their stuff to compare it to. Right. And so I was very aware of that. And I got made fun of terribly whenever I was in school because I too grew up in a trailer. So Bobby is my brother from another trailer park. Okay. Love and adore him. And so I knew that I was being bullied at school all the time. And some of you sitting here like you had a trailer specifically, right? Growing up in a van, right? Yesterday I was like, oof, what did I complain about, right? But growing up in a van, right? And so as you're a kid, though, you can't combat that. You don't know, you're not really equipped with the tools. And because every day when I went home, I was really dealing with my first bully, who was one of my parents. Okay. I was raised by a narcissist. And for those of you that are like, narcissist is such a buzzword, it is, right? People use it wrong and it kind of waters it down for the rest of us. But I want to describe to you what it's like to be in relation with a narcissist, especially whenever you're being raised by one, your brain's developing with one. Okay. So imagine that you are drowning, you're in a pool. Okay. And there's a person that every time right before you pass out, your lungs fill with water, they have their foot on the back of your head and they let you up a little bit to catch a breath. And just when you get that breath caught, they put their foot back down on your head and push you back under the water. Okay. Love is earned in that relationship. It's not free, especially whenever somebody literally was his job. It was literally my dad's job to love me, right? I didn't ask to be here. They brought me here, right? But it does. There's a reward system. And there's this weird thing that happens that every time you do really good for a narcissist, they're like, yes, yes. And they love you. They're like, okay, cool. I'll do that same thing and I'll get that same validation. They give you nothing, literally nothing. So I grew up, no self-worth, my story is that I was always trying to just get my dad's love and affection. I was unloved. I didn't know what love felt like. And then on top of that, I was raised by a 90s Christian parent. If any of you ever just get on Google and it's a comedy skit by somebody and just Google 90s Christian parent, it's actually very, very funny. There's another thing about us trauma kids is that darkness is funny to us. So if I make inappropriate jokes, that's how I cope. So just bear with me, right? But I was raised by a 90s Christian parents where they use scripture for their benefit, right? And so lots of shame, right? I never could do good. And so to turn to God really wasn't an option because he believed what my dad believed, right? But I will tell you this, just like success leaves clues for people, purpose leaves a path. Okay. And God always saw something bigger in me. Like my plan was never to have this narcissist shove me down in that water and keep drowning me, right? I was always made for something bigger. And that did show up in my life later on down the road. Well, let me just I want to tell you this story because it led me to being authentic. When you have no value in yourself, that you don't even think about being authentic because you have no idea who you are, right? And so I was 11 years old whenever I first tried to take my own life by drinking a bottle of nighttime medicine. It was NyQuil. Best sleep I ever had. No, I'm just joking. It was a joke, dark joke. Sorry. And I was 13 when I started cutting. Okay. Another dark joke, just funny. Somebody said to me, I was on a Zoom call with Turner in MasterNetworks, and he said, "You have tattoos. You're a creative person, right?" And I was like, well, more like a coping mechanism, but yes, Turner, I'm a creative person. And so I was 13 when I started cutting. And then when I was 14, my parents did us all a favor and got divorced. Okay. And my mom is a victim in all this, you guys. I love my mom. She was so focused on being a single mom and providing for us that it wasn't that I was unloved by her. It was just, I understood what her focus was. There was 3 of us and she was trying to make it, right? And so when I was 14, I did what every girl does that has daddy issues, right? I fell in love with a guy that was 2 years older than me. I had no business being with, right? He had a car and he was in a band and he skateboarded. Hot, right? And so if my dad's not giving me love, I'm going to get love from this guy. Of course I am, right? So I looked for love in all the wrong places. And I did get some freedom when my parents got divorced because the narcissist and the guy in control was gone and she was busy working. And so I 100% did what every other kid would do and took advantage of that. And so when I was 14, my boyfriend comes to pick me up with his friends and we are going to go get something to eat. And we're in this horrific car accident. All 3 of us are ejected from the vehicle. We are all very, very injured, rushed to the emergency room. And as we are in the emergency room, I guess there's this part where they cut your clothes off of you. Right. And I was awake. I had the worst injuries out of all of them. I was awake and I remember them cutting my clothes off me. And I remember one of the nurses or doctors that was with my boyfriend at the time at a different table. I remember her saying, "Did we contact the parents for the little girl yet? Because she's not going to make it." Okay. I'm not even there. And what's weird is I was at peace with that. Not because I had an extreme amount of faith and I knew I was going to go be with the Lord, but because I was exhausted. Please end this. take this. I'm exhausted, right? I'm unloved. I'm searching for it in all the wrong places. I'm still not feeling validated. I'm still not feeling that feeling. Just take me. Okay. I was there for a little bit. My injuries were insane. My dad came to visit me one time when I was in ICU for 10 minutes on his way for a hunting trip and never came back. Right. So imagine I'm dying, by the way, pretty much is what they think. And the doctor says to my mom, I just want to let you know something, that you need to call your pastor or whatever you do, because it's not going to be good. The odds are she's probably not going to make it, right? And their doctor slogan. Well, nobody in here has met my mama before, but you don't tell my mom nothing, especially about her children, okay? And she looked at him, and at this time, my mom is actually getting involved in the church in like a real way, not in a 90s Christian parent way, because she's separated from my dad. And she calls my pastor up, and it was my youth pastor, Pastor John. He comes in, he prays with me. By the way, I'm on a morphine drip, so every time I felt a little pain and woke up, I literally was like, beep, right? Put me back out. And he comes out of the room, and so the doctor says, all right, we're going to take her now. And I just want to let you know, she's bleeding internally. She collapsed her lung, and whenever we let the air out of her chest, we can't tell what the other organs are going to do that have been damaged. Okay, because I broke all my ribs on one side. Well, when you break ribs, they have to go somewhere and they're sharp, right? And puncture wound to my forehead. I had to get plastic surgery. Well, my mama, who's feisty, who again can't tell her nothing, she said, well, that's fine that you think that. But I don't know if you just saw my pastor from church. He just prayed the blood of Jesus over her. Yeah. And I respect your science, but that only goes so far. And then there's the Lord. Right? So I'm like, guys, my mom has been through so much at this point, right? And then here I am, like running around with my boyfriend, adding to her problems, right? Walked out. They went to go take me apart for surgery, and they came back within minutes. And they said it's the most bizarre thing. She has scar tissue forming. So we're gonna, right here in this bed, we're gonna release the air out of her side, and then we're gonna move her upstairs. Just like that, within minutes. I went from dying to not dying in minutes. And my mom's like, oh, okay, well, if I didn't believe before, I believe now, right? Like, all right, here she is, right? So I would like to say that at 14 years old, I was equipped with the tools to come out of that situation and see it for what it was. That God was like, hey, girl, this isn't what your path is. You're made for bigger than these people allowed you. I have to go back and tell you, so I have ADHD. And I wasn't allowed to use a PowerPoint, and that's my guideline for things so I don't forget it. And so let me just go back and say, before this accident happened, a week before, I had a nightmare that my mom died. And I woke up and I cussed God. And I won't say what I said, because to this day, I am horrified to the way I spoke to him, okay? And something came over me that day that was like, no, girl, you're going to need him, right? And I ignored it. And then a week later, that accident happened. And so it's almost like if you ask him to show himself to you, like, right? So, but I had a purpose. There was a path, and I just wasn't paying attention to it. And so I was 14. So then, I didn't wake up and think, like, I didn't start going to church and actually paying attention to what was going on there. That wasn't where my focus was. I was a kid still. I went right back to hang out with my boyfriend and all the things. And then I went on vacation with my boyfriend. I got caught in a riptide, survived it. Right. And so I always say, like, God kind of probably chuckles at me in my life, because he's like, girl, you're teaching me patience. Like, what are we doing? I keep sending you signs and signals, and you are not picking up on it. Right. And then I became a teen parent because I was still cutting. I still would sit at stoplights and think, like, what if I just press the gas when my light's red? Right. That was still my mindset. And so I became a teen parent. And because I think that God knew that I love people so much and so hard that I'm not going to leave my offspring here alone, and that it was going to correct me. And it did. I never cut again after that. I was not suicidal, because I had to live for this baby and him, and he was the most important thing, right? And so I say all that to say this. It wasn't until I was given permission by somebody to be able to be myself. I still got involved in business, and I still was in entrepreneurship, and I was doing personal development because that comes with it. Thank the Lord, right? And so I was getting better, and I was getting stronger mentally, but I still didn't have a purpose. And I still wasn't being myself. I was the worst people pleaser And some of you, this is going to hurt. If you're a people pleaser, it's going to hurt for you to hear. But people pleasing is one of the highest forms of manipulation. And for those of you that are like cringing inside and you're like, what do you mean? No, I'm not manipulating. It's unintentional. You're not intentionally doing it. You're people pleasing the situation and the circumstances to be liked. But fake to be liked is a social toxicity. You will never be loved in that situation because you're not being authentic to who you are. If you're weird and you're authentic like me, like yesterday I was dancing like down at the arcade and somebody like pointed out and I'm like, oh, this is my dopamine. I'm trying to get dopamine right now. Right? I'm going to dance a little jig. Weird is awesome. Weird is just different. It's not bad. It's just different. Right? And I remember whenever I learned that about people pleasing, that I remember saying to my pastor at church, like, I love people. I have a big heart. I'm not people. I'm sorry. I apologize, Zoomies. I'm not people pleasing to manipulate. It's because I love when people are joyful. I went to culinary school to be a pastry chef because I love dessert, because I love how happy people are when they eat dessert. How dare you say I'm manipulating people, right? And my pastor at church said this: your power in manipulation is really your spiritual power of persuasion that's been perverted. Your power in manipulation is really your spiritual power that's been, or of persuasion that's been manipulated or been perverted. I'm sorry. One more time so I can get it right. Your power in manipulation is really your spiritual power of persuasion that's been perverted. And I was like, oh, okay. He said, you can love people. You just have to love the right people. Right? So let me give you a framework really quick of the 3 things I did to be the most authentic to who I am. The first one, I think this is one of the most important, we've kind of touched on it a lot today or in the past few days, is boundaries. Boundaries are so important because you can't be authentically you if you are worried about everybody in the room that's judging you, what they think about you. You have to be indifferent to the thoughts of others. You have to be indifferent. You need relationships because that's how you become self-aware, right? What you like, what you don't like, that's a good part of it, right? But boundaries are important. And guys, they're not for you. They're not for the other person. They're for you. Okay, like with my dad, I had to go complete no contact with my dad for 3 years because I knew that he could manipulate me, and narcissists are good at this. Is what they do for that's like breathing. I knew he could manipulate me to get me back in and get that hold on me. He would do it by crying. He would do it by saying, I'm sorry, and saying all the right things. And no matter how many times he did it, I would fall for it every single time. So for me, I had to go complete no contact. Remove the people that are not meant for you. They're dressed like family or friends right now, probably, if you haven't done this yet. DNA makes you relatives. It does not make you family. Okay, your chosen family is the power that you have in your life and the love that you're going to feel and the unconditional love that you're supposed to feel. All right. Boundaries aren't forever. A lot of people think like boundaries mean you don't love somebody and they're going to be forever. They're not forever. They're until they change the behavior. And if they can't change the behavior, that sucks for them because I'm great. Right. And it doesn't mean you don't love them. I love my dad. I wish him well. I pray for him every single day. Okay, it doesn't mean you don't love the person. It just means I love me more and I am the priority. And you don't get to me unless you can align yourself with my standards for what I expect. The second part of this framework is self-awareness. You have to know yourself, what you like, what you don't like. If you're a people pleaser like I was, I had to learn that. Now I'm well-rounded and I have like a Heinz 57 lifestyle, because because I always loved and wanted to be like everybody else to make them happy. And so I know all kinds of things, all kinds of music. I was into cars at one time. Puerto Rico, I didn't know that's where you were from, but Puerto Rico, I learned Spanish because I hung out with a bunch of Puerto Ricans. I dressed like them. I went to their nightclubs. I lived in Jersey, right? I was a chameleon. So, so it did serve me in some capacity, right? But I had no idea who I was. So self-awareness is huge. What do you like? What don't you like? Sit by yourself and think about that. Your core values. Somebody said it yesterday, core values. What are your core values? What are your non-negotiables? That's who you are. What do you like and not like? Right? You have to figure out who you are in order to set the boundary to let people in or not let them in. The third one is be vulnerable and be okay. Being vulnerable meaning Authenticity equals vulnerable, or vulnerability equals authenticity. You have to be vulnerable. And guys, some of you are sitting there panicking. I can tell you're panicking right now. What, be vulnerable? I'm not letting these people in. You don't have to tell people where you buried the bodies to be vulnerable. Okay? Like literally, you can share so much before you share the things that you're taking to the grave. Okay? This could be as, let me just tell you a funny story. This is how small and silly being vulnerable is. Some people think it has to be like a depressing, crying moment of your life. I share with somebody that I like rocks as a joke. I like rocks. I collect rocks. They're all over my house, right? When I go hiking, it takes me forever because I'm like, ooh, a rock. And hey, also ADHD, by the way. And so I was shared that with somebody one time, and he said, okay, well, since you shared that, I like rocks too. Right. And I'm like, okay, so we're these dorky rock people, right? Do you know that we will find rocks and crystals and deliver them to each other's house in our mailbox? And we built this whole relationship where he's a realtor and he helped us find our 50 acres for deer camp. And then we connected him with people. And like, so it's a business relationship. I don't know if we would have ever arrived to that if we wouldn't have talked about our dorky liking of rocks, right? So like vulnerability does not mean some sad sob story that you have to share with everybody for them to get to know you. It just means open up and tell them who you are. Surface level is boring. Don't be surface level. You can't be that way with me because I'm going to ask you why your tooth's missing. Okay? You're going to, if you don't tell me, I'm going to ask you. Okay. In fact, I think Martha, I'm like, oh, so when I found out you were from a cult last night, I was like, when I found out you're from a cult, like, I have so many questions. I want to know more about you because who you are is deep, right? It's not all this, like, I wear this and I do this, and that's not what it is, okay? And then be okay. Be okay that people don't think you should be successful. Be okay that people don't think that you're qualified. Be okay that they don't like you. If you don't like me, that sucks for you because I'm awesome, right? And if you're boring, just say that, right? You don't have to match my energy. That's okay. The first time I was told I was intimidating, it ruined my life because I'm not. Because I'm like, I just want to love you. I'm not intimidating. But no, they were intimidated. I'm not intimidating, right? So let me in and let me love you. And if you choose not to, that's okay. That's a you thing. You'll get there one day. Or I'm going to make you. No, right. So boundaries being number one. Number two being self-awareness. Right? Guys, celebrate. Somebody said yesterday, celebrate yourself. If you think you're awesome, you are. You do that. Right? You are awesome. If you think that your hair looks good today, you're like, girl, feeling myself today. You can do that, by the way. It's okay to like yourself. It's okay to think that you're a badass. Do you know what I mean? Like nobody's going to be like, oh, you cocky thing. Nobody's doing that to you. Right? And number three, be okay and be vulnerable. So I don't even know what my time was, but I didn't forget anything. Oh, look, now we're 6 minutes to spare. Oh. I was waiting for you to give me some hand smoke signal that was like, it is right there. You're right. No, I'm good. I was waiting for you to give me a smoke signal back there. And I was like, he's not giving me anything. He hasn't said 5 minutes, 2 minutes. All right, no. Well, so because I didn't want to go over time and I'm good with that, that's it.